the circumstances were that my parents wanted to take the family abroad after I graduated from high school. And in the United States, it was 1965, and that was the year of international living. And they were very much aware of this, but everybody I've talked to since then have never heard about this. So I don't really know where this whole idea came from. But anyway, they decided that they would take us all, me as the oldest. I have a younger sister, 2 years younger, and 2 younger brothers, 5 and 7 years younger.
So how old were you?
So I was 17.
Okay.
And, in high school I really loved biology, so I was going to be a geneticist. And that was my, idea, what I was going to do. And so, okay, all right, so we're going to Japan. Well, where is Japan? I never heard of it before, Anyway, when we were kids, we used to laugh at the Japanese products coming into our hometown. We'd go look at the tennis shoes selling for $3 and say, oh, man, these must be really cruddy tennis shoes, And so Japan didn't really have a very good image at that time. And I had no idea where it was. I had to look it up on the map. And it wasn't my idea to go there. And how we got there was interesting because I would have been in my first year of university. So they wanted me to go to a university abroad, but American universities are 4 years. And most English-speaking places are 3 years because it's the British Commonwealth, right? And they will not allow an American freshman to start, that you have to be a sophomore. And so all of the places that they thought of, like England, like Australia, New Zealand, all of the Commonwealth countries and whatever that spoke English, it wasn't possible. So they started looking at the second tier. And that's where my father's profession came in very handy because we lived in the Front Range of Colorado where there were a lot of truck farmers that had been Japanese interned during the war and from California, and then they'd settled in the area, and so he was an optometrist and a lot of his patients were Japanese. And so they said, well, why don't you go to Japan? And so they started looking into this, and they found that there was an international Christian university set up after the war between Japan and New York, the foundations in New York. And it was a cooperative thing where everybody who went through the 4-year university had to be fluent in both Japanese and English. And so they had hired a lot of professors who taught in English as well as Japanese, and so that would be perfect, and I could go in as a year abroad student, right? So I did, and I was supposed to be in the dorm, but they didn't have a place for me, so they put me in a Japanese family. Although my own family was in base housing outside of Tachikowa Airforce Base, because my father was medically retired out of the Army, and so he had privileges on base. And so my siblings all went to military schools. And
so what year would this have been?
This was 65, 66 academic year. So I had arrived in Japan at 17. I turned 18 very quickly. I went off to university, and this Japanese family took me in, and they had 2 daughters, aged 10 and 6. And the daughters and the mother didn't speak any English, but the father did. However, he was never there because he was an engineer at Haneda Airport, and he would stay down there all week and only come home on the weekends. So I was in class, and I took half my credits in Japanese, so starting Japanese language, and half my credits I started out in biology and physics. And I soon discovered that I really didn't want to do this. I thought the art history courses were really cool. So I started taking all of art history courses, and I was really lucky because one of the professors there was the person who had written 2 books on Japanese archaeology in English, and Jonathan Edward Kidder. And so I took all of his courses and got really excited about the tomb period of Japan and the ceramic figurines and the gold crowns and the jade jewelry and things like this. So I really loved that stuff. Meanwhile, I was having a lot of trouble with the restrictions placed on young women in Japan. Curfew, yeah, I had to be home with the Japanese family all the time in the evenings, and no parties, and it's kind of restrictive. And I went home every weekend, or maybe every other weekend, to see my family, which was really good, because a lot of students who go over there at that age don't have that backup, right? They have to suffer the Japanese system, which is so different.
Yeah.
And it was stuff like, they didn't have hamburgers then. If you order a hamburger in the restaurant, it was a hamburger patty with a fried egg on top. Well, that is not the idea of a kid's, ideal hamburger. I missed driving, because I used to drag Maine, in my hometown, and we had a lot of fun doing that as teenagers. I missed my boyfriend, who I didn't want to leave behind, and I think that's one of the reasons why my parents took us away, is to get my sister and me away from our boyfriends at the time. So,
were they bad influences? Were they bad boys?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they were. They weren't academics.
They were just boys.
Yeah. So actually, I hated Japan for the first 8 months, because I had been ripped out of my hometown kind of teenage life. Although I wasn't very happy there either. Forced to do all this stuff that I wasn't really, it wasn't my choice. I was just doing this because they put me there. And it was only when my family went home, and I was actually moved to the base and lived with a couple there, that I really experienced freedom. And because they were Americans, so they didn't put all these restrictions on me. And I also got together with 4 other girls in my year who were also doing year abroad, same age. And we used to go downtown in Tokyo and go through the parks and ring the temple bells and go to museums. And so all of a sudden it was magic, and I was just completely, absorbed. So when I came back, the idea was to go to the University of Colorado, and so I could continue my Japanese language studies. And so I became a Japanese, what they call here, a linguist. I'm not studying any linguistics, but just doing Japanese language and literature and East Asian civilization as my undergraduate degree. And the problem was that the University of Colorado didn't have any Japanese art history or Japanese archaeology at the time. And that's what I really wanted to do. And in the summer of 1968, I went to a summer school for Japanese, second-year Japanese, at Stanford. And I met these guys who were at Princeton and at Princeton, actually. And they were going off to do Japanese art history. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. I'll do Japanese art history if I can't do archaeology. And so I went to Harvard as a graduate student and started there. And I discovered, art history, it only works with artifacts or objects. And you have to decide the value and the price and whether it was authentic or not real. That's not archaeology. So I had already planned to have a job going to Expo 70. Before I left Colorado, and the job started in January of 70.
And where was that?
In Osaka, Expo 70. And so I left after one term at Harvard and went to Osaka and never returned to Harvard. I just dropped. I still have an incomplete on my transcript for that. I never took the exam for French Impressionism. But Harvard was going to make me learn Japanese. No, they were going to make me learn German and French, which I had never taken, not realizing or not acknowledging the whole idea that I had already had 4 years of Japanese and 2 years of Chinese, and those were the languages that I needed for research. So I was really kind of irritated at that. So, and that's how I got both, from Japan to Japanese archaeology. But that's not the end of the story.